Welcome to the Powerful Vulnerability Podcast, where we believe in the transformative power of storytelling from the heart. I'm Dr. Ashley.
And I'm Catherine Russler.
We are so glad you're here. Many stories here are extraordinary.
And some carry quiet wisdom.
All teach us. Welcome back to Powerful Vulnerability. Today we are joined by the lovely Sarah Collins Prince. Sarah is a Christian pastor, author, community developer, life coach, and speaker. Sarah and her family are Americans and have been living in the South African township of Ocean View for 16 years. They are the founders of the NGO Ubuntu Football, which aims to develop teenagers to be citizens of significance in South Africa. Sarah is the author of her memoir, Anguish to Awakening, on the story of their family intersecting with special needs and community, and she is currently writing her second book. The focus of Sarah's life is to work with people in the intersections between spirituality, healing, growth, and empowered living in a holistic way that brings true action and life. Welcome, Sarah. We're so glad to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
We're thrilled. Can you tell us a little bit about Ubuntu Football?
So, joke now that I somehow accidentally found myself in this life that's all about soccer, and don't even like sports. As many older women, all of a sudden in your 40s, you're like, wait a minute, I don't like that, or I don't prefer that. So, I'm not a sports person, but my entire life is about soccer. And so, my husband, soccer in college and beyond, and then we worked in a church for about 7 years, and we had this itch be overseas. This is how often Ashley and I would intersect in our ideas and in the world. Just had this itch that we couldn't scratch, just this thing that was kind of inside of us. We went to South Africa for 3 months in 2008, met a new friend there, and he was like, sat down literally, I have this idea to use soccer to change the landscape and the young people in South Africa. And it was like this perfect intersection. To do something outside of him and do something. My husband really needed a purpose and a kind of a go in. And so we moved to South Africa in 2009 with a 9-month-old child. And the idea was to start a soccer academy. And, it's in South Africa, everyone plays soccer. All the kids are playing it in every street corner. And we really just saw it as like a language and a way to use something that youth were passionate about to then develop them, mentor them, and help them to reach their greatest potential. So the idea that we always talk about is that talent is evilly, but opportunity isn't. So we have all these really talented young kids in these townships and it's all over South Africa. And now we're going to other countries in Africa. They just don't have the opportunity. And so we've over 16 years built this academy. We have a residence, we have our own school, and we do elite soccer. So we've sent 26 kids to America on full scholarships. We have, I think, 6 to 8 playing. There's a couple that are trialing right now. We have about 20 that are playing professionally in South Africa. But it's really, again, just this elite football used as a vehicle to help them realize who they are, their identity, their wholeness. Just like many places in the world, it's like 60% of kids grow up without a dad. A lot of times, if you have parents, there's a lot of brokenness because of apartheid and the history of South Africa, which isn't really that special. All over the world, there's a lot of troubles and woes, but in South Africa, there's a lot of ingrained trauma. So it's using football to help these young men and have girls become people that are moms and dads and changers and breaking cycles of poverty and pain. And so it's a lot of sports, but it's really, so my role in that has been many different things. But ultimately, my husband and I just kind of call ourselves mom and dad because we feel like we're mom and dad of all these kids and a lot of graduates. And now I think our staff's about up to 40. We have a pretty big staff of a South African staff. And there's a lot of growth happening this year. So the whole thing that's happening that started with just this heart of like, we feel like there's more. We were in church, which is great. We were at Raleigh, North Carolina, which is a great city. But there was just this like, what if we could be used for something more or be a part of something more? And so, yeah, we've been here for 16 years. And it's pretty beautiful. We think that God has touched it, but we've been really lucky to be at the forefront of it and see amazing things happen.
Wow. Can you tell us about life in the Cape Town?
Yeah. So, like I think many people, my husband and I would follow development organizations when we were in the States. And, we would see these stories of people living in environments. We had friends, Ashley and I have some mutual friends doing these crazy things, and
Mhm.
they would come back and we just tell us everything. We would just like hang on every word. And so then when we came to in 2008, we were then just as, God, as the universe would happen. We came in a relationship with someone who had taught in my graduate work. So I did graduate work at Duke Divinity. And so there was a South African bishop that was there, and he was retired, teaching there about the history of South Africa and about breaking injustice and claiming God's people, for who they are in God. And South Africa has a beautiful history in that. And so then when we came back in 2000, we came here in 2008, we met up with him. We were literally walking around this township where we live now, talking about things we could do in the church. And there's in the Methodist church, which is his church tradition, there's a church and then there's a pastor's house. And so we're walking around the township and he's like, it's just a bunch of white people. We're taught dreaming, blah, blah, blah. And well, you guys should just live in this pastor's house. No one's living in here. Everyone just laughed. And we went home and just thought, I don't know. I think that could be it. I think that could be different. And there's places all over the world that are like, people that look at missions in Africa, they call Cape Town like Africa Light, because it is very European here in Cape Town. And we just thought, like, what if we just give it a go of trying to live among the people that we, and not just coming from a place of we're here with, everything to offer you. Now, the humbling part is that's exactly what was in our heads, even though we were trying to position ourselves like, no, we're your friends. We're right beside you. I mean, time and time and time again over the past 16 years, we didn't realize where we put ourselves, that we're the elevated ones. We know what we're doing. I went to school for this. I studied this. I've read this book. I can get the money for this. You see broken things, and to not want things to be broken. It's a broken thing when you think you know how to fix it. Often you go into places just assuming we know how to fix it. And so it's been, we also just didn't know if people would like let us live here. And honestly, they weren't like mean, but they just didn't talk to us a lot at the beginning. Like just like ghosted us. And so we were just like walking around. I mean, luckily we have this really baby, and she is just joy. She's now 17. She's Kieran Joy, and she just toddled around. And we lived in the church property, so you couldn't avoid Kieran. You could kind of like not talk to us so much, but this beautiful child whose life and started winning people. And then slowly, things started happening. There'd be a funeral, or there'd be a baptism, or a woman counseling. And then slowly situations started happening where people, almost against their better judgment, started letting us in. And these like really tiny holy moments happened. Now I will say there were a few people who just in from the beginning that just said, I'm going to be friends with you. And then I think later on they realized, I've never actually been really friends with a white person. We've had a lot of people say that to us. But there were people that just were positioned in our lives that just were like, no, you can do this. You could live here. You can be our friend. We trust you. And we didn't deserve that. That's the other thing, is you think you deserve like this place and you don't even realize it. So we really got humbled and realized we have to look at we have to listen to the stories. We have to where people are at. We have to listen to what they need, what their answers are. And that included how we built our soccer academy. It was completely driven by the community and listening to the voices that are and so slowly we became a part of the community. Some of that was in really hard. My daughter had a terrible burn at 1.5, where 22% of her body was just burned off with hot. We were in a burn ward for 5 days, and she was wrapped like a mummy, literally, and she could have died. And so then I'm walking my mummified baby around. That shifts something. When people have to bring you clothes and food, you don't know, something shifts. And then when my son was diagnosed with autism, then 13, he was diagnosed with autism at 2 years old. And it was just like, well, that could be, we're here. You're welcome, church, God, everyone, but we can't have a son who has special needs, who doesn't talk, who can't go into the property, who can't go to a soccer game. My husband's literally raising up these young men to be elite soccer players, and my son has autism. And so we went through that with the community. People came in and said, we're with you. They didn't say I did it. They came in. And we were totally. Big story of our son is he was diagnosed very young, had a lot of intensive therapy. and he just has a really high brain capacity, and he lost his diagnosis at 5 years old, which is rare, but it happens. In a church community, everyone, people want to say it's a miracle, and it's not. Brain, the brain changed, but that was in our community. That happened in Ocean View. America was like, bring him home. Other Americans in our, that were our friends saying, you're choosing your organization over your son. You need to bring him to America. And we just knew his story was supposed to be in Ocean View in our township. And it was through that community, because autism is someone who wants to connect, but doesn't know how, doesn't know how to love and to be loved. That's one of the parts through living in community. So it's, I also joke, it's like a science experiment. We have, white American kids being mixed race township in South Africa. Now they both go to bursaries there, which is just so gross and weird and bonkers. But they're both at this amazing private school. So they're like in every, they have friends that are like millionaires, friends that like don't have dinner like right now, don't know all of what will look like as adults. But step have kind of just known this is our home. We bought a home in Raleigh. We sold it. We bought it in the community, which everyone outside said, you can't do that. You can't put money into South Africa. And it's been home. It's our family. It is so much a part of who we are these people that are neighbors and our family, and it's changed us. It seems very cheesy. It's one of those things you see at the end of one of those mission trips, development trips, but it has changed us. And every day we're learning something new, because we're not just here, we're serving each other, learning together. And that is different. But I never forget what it's like for the people, or I'm reminded every day it's like to live in these communities, to grow up in these kind of circumstances. And I'm thankful for that. I think we need to know what our neighbors are suffering from, how their hearts are breaking, fix it. But just so we witness and we stand with them. That's something we get to do every day. But they've done that for us. They witnessed our suffering and our pain also. And that is something that could only happen if you're really in life. So we'll see, we'll see what happens with our kids and what that means to their lives. As I said, they do love Africa. They love, and they're very happy. Surprised that my daughter wants to college in America, but I trust her because she's a beautiful brain and a beautiful heart. And, I trust what she feels is next for her step, and I've done my part in her life, which is here.
That's awesome.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's so far away from you, but when raising kids in a culture that's not I live in Guadalajara, Mexico. I've been here. I've been in Mexico for 15 years now. And my kids are Mexican. They were all born here. I'm US American. They are also that, and that's a part of their identities that, they grow, I'm sure they'll be exploring as well. So along that line, you've now raised your culture different from your own for all the phases of how has
into
that
teenagerhood.
Has that stretched you as a mother and as a human being?
Yeah, I think I just to feel really grateful. I don't know. I have just this raw gratefulness for where we live. We live township, but we live in like the south of Cape Town. And it's just like it's a pace. Like people are like very hippie-ish. They're at the beach every day, swimming, like plunging and climbing. It's just a pace of and no, it's just a really beautiful to raise kids, not even our township, but then our wider community, And I think even when we moved here, I was like, my kids are going to go to school in Ocean View because, we're here and we're going to do it. And then I started volunteering in the schools and I was like, I don't think they're going to go there. Because there are a lot of problems in some of these schools, just like a school in, any of the impoverished in America. Those schools have a lot of challenges, little money. It can be dangerous. It can, they're the best they can. But it was like, okay, well, I can't send kids there. So they have different experiences. But I just feel really grateful that they get to have experiences. And being in Africa, there's a different parenting, different, and the way people parent is different. The way people see the world is different. It feels slower and intentional, and some of that's the African values that are just intrinsic in Africans, and that's white Africans and Black Africans and mixed race, which we call colored. But I also think what's interesting too is that your kids lead you to the people you're supposed to be around. like if I were to have planned what it would look like to raise my kids, I think I would have been like those people. But then your kids make friends with people that you don't expect, and then things just, bloom. And so I have this, my son made this group of all these really weird kids when he was like in grade one. My husband would be like, all those weird, and they're super into Pokemon, and the parents are all weird. And so then I just started hanging out with them. And now I've become very close with these very weird people. And there's a group of us women, and so it's me who's a pastor. They call me Pastor Prince. I've done weddings, I've done funerals for them. None of them are Christians. Then there's someone who is Wiccan. She's a witch friend, very, very spiritual person. My very best friend. There's someone who's Jewish. There's someone who's Hindu. And then there's who's agnostic. And just close, we talk deeply about religion and parenting. And we just we all have, we all have weird boys. We have very boys, and we're sensitive parents. And so it is an African sentiment of just doing life differently here. And so I think we've just to listen to others, listen to the communities, the people that are around our kids. And like extra sports are cheaper. It's easier to know the teachers here. There's less like fear and barriers. And America, my daughter gets to act. She's, been on History Channel docuseries. She's been in commercials, but yet she like farts, watches Friends, like, on repeat. Like she's not like this, she's like a kid doing incredible things who also, there's something different about that. And so they're missing things. She'll get to college and she'll say like, Mom, I didn't, she'll have a list of like, we didn't do, our kids have never been to Disney World. Like there's a lot of that are not America they've missed. There's a lot of things they've missed, learn. So that's the thing is you choose a life or, and then so I think there's things they've missed that not. We've been really be able to travel back in America. They're very close to their cousins. So they understand America, but I think they're just very present here. And I think Africa's like that. You're just here. I mean, they talk about Africa time. It's different. It's people centric. It's not time centric here. So, you're just where you. I mean, my husband was like, "Can I play pickleball just now?" I mean, who knows when he's with our neighbor? I don't know if he'll come home tonight. Like it's just not a thing here. You just kind of enter into it. And that's
Same here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what
It's not the same
we talked
here.
about. Yes. It's not. No, I talked about before we got into my second book, I start with talking about Mexicans. We'd go to East LA every summer, and we would be ingrained with my very, huge Mexican family. And that was very formational for me in a way my mom didn't realize, in a way my younger sister. But I thought that this is it. This noise, food, this fighting, this, we're close and the colors are large and everyone's screaming. And there was something that I was searching for and that I found here. And then my kids someday will realize they have something they missed, and then they'll be searching for it. That's the stage of now watching them become young, they're teenagers, they're gonna nest and like, okay, well, my job, I've been really present. And I'll, put my therapy and say a lot of what we missed, but I think it's been a beautiful life.
That's so awesome. Can you talk to us a little bit about what it means to you to be invested in your community and what that looks like on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, in North Carolina, I really wasn't invested in my community. I had a lot of guilt about it. I didn't know how to do it. Go on these trips to Mexico, and we would like build a house, and I'd be like, "This is life," and then I'd go back to Raleigh, and I like didn't talk to my neighbors. And I think I used the way Americans can be as an excuse that I couldn't do it. That's the thing. I also think I used a way Americans are, the way that I'd been raised to be like, well, you can't do that in America. You can't be a neighbor in the same way, like in Mexico or in Africa. And so I back and, I think I limited myself and what it looked like to be a neighbor and part of the community when I was in Raleigh. A very insular church community, of people all just like me. That was my community. And here, we've just immersed ourselves in this community where we live, the township community, and we have a lot of, and then we've also had to be wise about boundaries because we do always have a pantry that's full, always have money we give, but we're not a soup kitchen as a home. It's our home, so that's an interesting part about living here is that we've had to be really present as community and people come and they just, and you just give, our organization is called Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. I'm only whole. So that is life. we were just in another township a couple nights, begged for money. I was like, no, this, woman who's from the community gave him money, and stuff like that happens all the time. And I'm like, I have more money than fact, but also we've had to learn you can't be everyone's everything. I can't give money to every kid. I can't feed every person if I also want to live here. And so then you have to kind of out what your boundaries are in that, what you are called and meant to do, where you're meant to go, and where you have to say, we can't help right now. Some random kids just came today asking for a soccer ball. I have a soccer ball. My son said, well, can I give him a soccer ball? I said, no, because you can't do everything for everyone. And so they're part of it in this kind of work that if you have what you can and you can't do, or else you just have cycles of burnout, which we had. I had a doctor in the early years here laugh at me because I kept getting sick, and she was like, I'm depressed. I'm depressed. I'm the happiest I've ever been. I'm living my dream. And then I was later like, yeah, yeah. And so that's the other thing of that I think is missed sometimes in the I do. And I don't think look inside and just like, we give everything, do everything. And no, we're quite honest about what we also need. Family, personally, we have to guard as well. But then there are people, when you're in need, you go and you do. And so that's the other thing is I have learned a flexibility that I'm neurodivergent. So flexibility can be hard for me, but in the community in Africa, you have to learn, okay, so, this person passed away, this person needs something, and they're my people. And so I go when my people are there. It's both and I was recently, Ashley's asked me about it. I recently was involved in a township, and lived in a mixed race township that's kind of like East LA. There's mostly structures, like concrete structures, and some shacks. And then a lot of the Black communities, which is African countries, they live often in shacks. And kind of in the beginning of the communities, there'll be some structures, cinder blocks, and then at the end it'll just be shack. And unfortunately, there's a lot of fires in those areas because a lot of wires that people just kind of wound up, cooking fires in the house and not watch it, or there's substance abuse. A lot of things can happen. An hour, 100 homes are burned. Happens. So one of our kids in our academy who's living with us here in November, his entire house down. So then a group of rallied around to raise money, and he had to take some time off and help build his house back. And then it happened again recently, but it was close. And this is another boy that we're really close to, but we also knew them. And so I just decided, he called us the night it happened. His mom called us, we went the day. I said, I'd never been 16 years. I'd never been after a fire township to see. So first of all, it's terrible. And then I was like, what do you need? And she was like, underwear, soap, roof sheeting. I mean, it's like everything you need. What do you need? It was like, I felt so, I just kept feeling so dumb. I need everything at work. She works at a primary school. And Stryker, her son, who we're close to, he was a soccer player now. So he was in Cape Town, couldn't get there. Calling them, the fire's coming close. They just lost everything. But I just hadn't witnessed it that close, and it just really leveled me. And I felt guilty that I didn't know what it looked like for the one family out of 100 families that lost everything. I'd never been there. So luckily, this young boy is an amazing young man, and he, a lot of Americans will come work with us, and he had a young man from Oklahoma that they've been really close for years, literally called Hayden, Stryker needs a house. Can you help raise some money? And he sent, $1,000 that night, raised money. It was boom, boom, one of those, just beautiful. So we, of one family, if we could help her, put up a house, but I kept going, every food and bring clothes and to bring toothpaste.
They can put up the house for $1,000.
2,000. Yeah.
Wow.
Because it's metal. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, it's a great question, Ashley, because we're helping them rebuild, and no one has the money to just rebuild that quick. Would you? You live there. But she's rebuilding a shack around shacks.
Yeah.
This isn't humane. How do you have dignity, So it's a beautiful thing. We'd be at a hardware store, all the people would be like, I can't believe you're doing this, and I'm just like, but this is terrible. That This is the reality. And it just, so you can't do that. You actually can't. Every week, all over the world, there are a million tragedies. You can't do it. You can't. And so after I felt stupid that I didn't know, I hadn't been closer, you feel bad. I'm so, unworthy. I'm so privileged. And then I realized, well, I was supposed to be drawn in. These are our people. We're very close to the reason why we won't do this for everyone. We can do it for them. And so and it leveled me, it dysregulated me. I cried a lot, but then I also just felt grateful to witness it. But this mother did have, Chloe had incredible dignity that she could build, that she did go back to work this week, that she does have people of them, that she does have a door, that she does have a window. She has that. It's not enough, but it's enough for now for her to keep going and to, have a meaningful. And so, yeah, it's witness that. It's hard to hold that. It's hard to, the day I was at her house that day. And so I went home after a full day with her and went on my soft king size bed and took a nap. That's not fair. But yet we have to keep, because this is who we are. This is our story we have right now. So I have to take care of myself, and I have to then continue to, focus on my relationships outside that make all this happen. And I have to do what I can, and I have to let go of what I have to be thankful that I get to love this family. We went and watched her son play a professional soccer game this week, and they won. And we had dinner after, and it was just beautiful. We consider him a son, and like, what a gift for me that I can, be, another mother to him, that him rising up, becoming a citizen of significance, this dream we had for a nonprofit. And it's not enough. So we must keep going and must keep working. So you step in when you can, and you only have a migraine, and you take your kids for ice cream, and be who you are in this world. That's all I can be. Yeah, a lot they're writing this second book. I'm all these topics right now. And a lot of the book is about love enough. Am I enough? Is God enough? And no and yes,
Right.
and that's the fragility of being human, is our questions. And I think ultimately we just said at the end of the day, I've done enough, I'm enough intrinsically with what's inside. And so thank you for letting me do this today. Whatever that is. And today shopping with my teenage daughter for her Mamma Mia 17th birthday party, where she's invited 50 people. And
Whoa.
fabulous. And that's the dichotomy in my life. It's just like, I don't even, your head could spin at how silly it all is. It's beautiful. That's what it should be. She should be
Right.
proudly this huge party, because she's also her, even though she was with me this week and visited this mother and family. And that's what she can hold on to. Both kids, that I enter in, I'm compassionate, I love, I do my thing, but I also I'm living my life too. And I don't feel to be fully me.
Well, what a gift, really, to, thinking about your daughter. She'll go into this party feeling grateful for all of it rather than entitled to it. And how much more joy will she because of it?
Yeah, she will. And she won't. She's also just a 17-year-old. That's what's so fun about parenting. It's the most humbling, and not everyone wants to be or called to be parents, but I am really thankful for it, because it's so humbling. And, my kids have a million lessons in humility, and yet they're just also kids. And yet I'm also, they also do the things, and you're like, I said that to my, like, it's just, it's a beautiful thing, all just growing and doing our best. And it's not enough, and it is enough. And better. That's the other thing. They're not, I think people think these amazing kids, and they're just kids. Yeah. They're just good and good, and good, because I'm just me too.
Yeah, all we can be human. We
Yeah.
all fail. Yeah, continuing to try your hardest every day and show up for your people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're doing
Yep.
spectacularly well. I want to pivot gears a little bit to hear more about your lived experiences, like an outspoken female leader in the church, home in the US and in South Africa.
Great question. My mom was Mexican. She was definitely like a feminist, definitely like, she's the favorite of her family, and she just was outspoken, led with a lot of strength, opinion, a lot of vibrancy. So that was my model. And I didn't grow up in the church. So I became a Christian at 16, then became really involved. I do love community. My husband and I both, that's how we met. We just love people. We love vibrant communities. We love celebrating. And so I loved the church, and I loved having a purpose. And so then I went to a Christian college, and there is where I felt like I was called to help people. Like that was my life. Only after that did I learn that people believed you couldn't do that as a woman. Like it was the opposite. I didn't know it's not allowed. So I never was in
Gotcha.
a community where that wasn't allowed. It was like, wait, so secondarily, um, and it was, but I was, in my college years, as I was kind of figuring out what that had incredible professors and that completely me as my uniqueness and, my boldness, loudness, and my messiness. And I just was in such a unique environment. And that's in college where I met my husband, and the Methodist church had female pastors. So he was just like, great. And then we both go, study, do graduate work and study in seminary. But I wanted it more, and so he's like, "You go, I'm cool." Even though he tried, he was just fine. Maybe I'll do it later or something. And so he just has always been really affirming of me. He's also very loud, very outspoken, very vibrant, but always created space for me. So that was never there's never been competition. He called himself the pastor's wife. Once I became a pastor, he just is very comfortable, and it almost is like I always forget it's not allowed. I think really coming to the community here is the first time it was very evident accepted as a female being a pastor and being a leader. I think I think Americans just hide it better. It's there just as much. But like older patriarchal men in these communities, they are not going to think you're stupid because you're a young white woman. I mean, they're just like,
Yeah.
so that was slow. And that was like, but that point I'm in my 30s. So I'm kind of like, well, then by now I know that this is going to happen. And, our years in North Carolina, I was just very affirmed. Our church by all genders, had mentors on all sides. So I just was able to grow by the time I came here. And it was so, I was just like, well, that's, not for everyone. And also in your 30s and 40s, you learn, like, I'm not a T. Like, it's not even like that. I'm just like, I'm a unique
Hmm.
person. So, interestingly, because we raise all our what we do, both as a family, always raised our own separate from the fundraising for nonprofit, which we run a school, we have a residence, have now 40 staff, so we've always raised the money for that. So when you are fundraising there are times where you aren't able to be as open about what you really believe, about what you would really say. And I'll say that when I'm in a community speaking live, I'm pretty honest. But I think as a female, because we raise money for what we do, and because otherwise we wouldn't do what we do, I've had to not share all of of what is true, of what I'm witnessing. And that's hard. And I know that won't always be. But I think as I'm getting older, I also have learned, when you're young, you think, I'm still my husband. I remember when we first married, I had to tell him everything he did wrong. It was like I was a correct monster. And I was like, this is wrong. You can't do this. You looked at me this way. Get older. I don't need to be everyone's like corrector. Like, I don't need to,
Hmm.
like, I'm not the police. So I think what's interesting is that in my 30s, we both, and my husband never said, you speak on that. I just knew intuitively I need to be wise about when I say about things. But I also knew people are listening. And so I really, we've always had a blog. Now I've written a book. Now I'm writing my second, like it's been, doing public speaking. Now I'm a life, always speak. But I think as I get older, I'm more comfortable about knowing when to something, not being threatening to who I am and what I believe. And I think that was learned, over a lot of years. I mean, the first time in high school, we moved to Florida. It was the first time I ever had people talk about orange pickers. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And I was like, oh my God, they're talking about Mexicans. They're in public to each other. They're talking bad about Mexicans. I'd never witnessed it. And because my mom is fair skinned Mexican, I'd never seen anyone disparage her. So people didn't know I was Mexican. And so I think over time, I've learned, a lot of people are mean bad, and it's their own story, it's their own pain, it's their own fear. I mean,
Hmm.
most bigotry and hatred is people's own pain. And then in 30s, having to be wise about when I speak about things. I speak in when someone wants to listen. I don't need to prove, I definitely don't need to prove that I am, worthy of speaking on behalf of God. And I mean, how many years have I've been a pastor? Maybe 20 years. Almost every time I'm in a new will be a man who will be sitting looking, and I can read what he's thinking. He's thinking, I didn't know a woman could do that. I didn't know a woman could say something that had holiness, because it's one thing when people
Ah.
speak. It's another thing when they're speaking for the divine and something. I was on a mission trip years ago with they threw me, when you're a young pastor, they'll throw you into stuff. So I was into this mission trip because no one wanted to be the leader of a trip of doctors and dentists. Ashley, you would understand this. They were like,
I
oh my
want to
gosh,
go.
who wants to lead this trip? Yeah, I was like, I'll go. And so then I get there, there's all these doctors and dentists, and they're just, everyone's more important than the next. It's ha ha la la la. And I'm not impressed and I'm not scared. And I also can, and so I had this very prominent dentist on it that said, Sarah, you're just a conduit. He's like, I've never seen it. And so I've always, people just speak things into your life. And so if you're a conduit of, for me, it's being a conduit of God's love. I don't need to tell you, you'll feel it if you want to. So I don't need to prove anything. And that is very freeing. So I'm excited for where I'll be able to be maybe more open, but I mean, no one's listening on social media. Like the only time someone's going to learn is in a relationship or when they say, I hope, and this has happened, years of just living where God just comes through me or we live differently, then people say, like, why do you do that? That's when someone wants to learn. We went to the villages of the rural Eastern Cape and we're with one of our house and we're walking around. It's crazy. And white people never go there. And Westerners never go. And so eventually we're walking this street. It's like, why are you guys here? And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, no, what are you doing? And I was like, great question. Like, that's when you earn the right to say, doing what you're doing. So just live it, just be it. And when someone's ready to hear, they will ask you. And so I love being a woman. I love being a woman with anyone because I know what I do. I know who I be in a village in the Eastern Cape. Or, we have givers that recently we've had someone on our board who's in like East Hampton. So we've been recently going to the Hamptons for events. And I'm like, also, it's just like, I don't know, I can be an environment. And I think that's what we're called to be. We're called to, especially today, when that is under fire, when there's that are afraid and they're terrorizing. The best response, I think, is to be an embodied person. But what a gift to be an embodied woman and just be living and be an example and be doing the good work wherever you are, right here. And and then there will come times where you can say something. I just think there's nothing else to say on social media. That's about there's nothing, no one's listening. Right. What if you lived your life and every opportunity? And as a woman, that is radical, to be a woman who's embodied, who's fully knows who she is, who doesn't need a platform, a person, and you're just here doing your thing. I don't mind if someone only had kids or if they only ask me about, my writing or, I don't mind. That's their stuff. I don't need to prove I'm a worthy, intelligent person. I'm an incredible, I'm just a person. That comes with age though. I think your 40s are so fun because you just like, wait, I'm just going to I don't need to fight all this. So I look forward to environments ahead. In my second book, I do speak in corporate environments in South Africa, specifically about diversity and relationships, which is obviously, any job space. Like I think people are wrestling with this all over the world, obviously. But I from my lived experience of being in a township for 16 years here, I think, this book will then give me up to, I want to teach, I want to do corporate, teaching and speaking, because I think there's something I've learned that I could share if people want to. We'll see, we'll see what, or not, or I'll just go on lots of hikes and play with my dogs. I don't know, it's fun.
Go ahead.
I'm actually reading a right now about just that. It's called The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. Have you read it? Check it out. She's an intercultural competence business consultant. I'm sure she would say her title is, more elegantly, but that's essentially what she does.
Yep.
And she provides a phenomenal differences that affect people in the workplace. But that often ascribe to, their personality, when actually what the point of tension is an unrecognized cultural difference.
Yes.
You would like it.
Yes, I would love it. And I think because we're in South Africa, having the staff, my job is kind of migrated doing like pastoring and coaching of our staff. And I do a lot of like the team teaching. And so all these, we've lived it and started a very NGO and it's grown. And so I've lived these dynamics, and you have an intercultural staff of people that respect each other, work together, that see each other's differences and celebrate and laugh. Like it is possible. And I think people are so scared of it. And I think it's so fun. Our staff is really, really diverse. And that's the other thing. I feel like I've gotten to experience it in our NGO and with our staff. And like, oh, this can happen. And so when people lean in, and our staff will say, I've never had friends that are like these different cultures. I've never known this. I've never heard this. And so I think there are things that are simple ways to lean in that we miss, and then we miss each other. So, we'll see what comes ahead.
Yeah, I think that's what'll really will change the world. People being friends with people
Mm,
who are different than themselves and understanding that we're the same at the end of it. And we're all
yes. Yeah.
equal and deserve the right to be happy.
Yes.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's
It's
it.
seems so simple, but it's everything. Yeah.
It is. It is.
Do you have any final words of wisdom for our audience today?
So this is powerful vulnerability.
Yes.
I was looking for this because I know you are vulnerable, and so I assumed you were, Catherine. But I think anytime we can get around people that doing that, and as women, it's really important. I mean, I'm sure men listen to your podcast too, but I think as women, we lean in better to that, and there's always something to learn. In the way life kind of rips us open, and why things are troubling to us, why we're stuck somewhere, what we're grieving, what we're celebrating. And I think it's powerful when women come together and explore that, and they learn from each other, and they say, I'm going to do a little bit more. Yeah, I would encourage, anyone that's listening to just, it's not a South African thing. It's not an Arizona thing. It's anyone, we're put up for a reason. It's not that you are wherever you are. So, what can you learn? Open up. I don't know. It changes you to open up and say, what do I need to hear? So I just, that's what I hope I keep doing. Sometimes you get hurt, sometimes it doesn't go well. And so you're tempted to just, be a
Up in a
turtle
ball.
and away.
Yeah.
And so maybe do that a little bit and then say, okay, what do I take and how do I go forward? I think we can all, so much still.
Amen to that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So talking to you guys.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Sarah, for sitting with us in your powerful vulnerability today.
It's been
Thanks
a
for having
pleasure.
me. You guys have created this space, and thank you for doing. It's really exciting. You guys are doing a great job and a beautiful thing. So may it continue to ripple out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for sitting in powerful vulnerability with us today. I'm Dr. Ashley.
And I'm Catherine.
Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast as your preferred app allows.
See you on the next episode.